Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Need for Speed Rivals, which might seem a little bit random to you, but I just had a hankering. If you're curious, Need for Speed Rivals has appeared on the Weekly Waypoint before, back in episode 118. That was back before I had my Elgato, so I had to record it natively and edit it and commentate on it natively from my PlayStation 4, so it's a little bit milky looking. But yeah, Rivals is, I think, one of my favourite Need for Speed games. I mean, it's one of the only ones I've actually finished. I went back and I was updating my backlog with a bunch of titles I hadn't thought about yet. Because if you don't know, I have a massive spreadsheet, which is the backlog of not every video game I've ever played, but all of the ones that come to mind, and all of the ones that I own which I want to play. And, I've got started in yellow, finished in green, and perfected in blue, and, I have all the genres and all the... I should just put a picture up, it'll be easier. But I decided to do two things related to that backlog spreadsheet. One, go back and add a bunch of extra games from my childhood that I hadn't thought to put on there, so like... all the Need for Speed games I played, all the Burnout games I played, all of that. And then two, when I realised how much that affected the ratio of games that I haven't finished, because I never finished any of those games, I went, well, what I should do as well, something that's been bugging me for a while, is that there are games that I've finished on multiple platforms and I only have one entry for those games. So I went and added, only if they've been finished, alternate platform entries for those games, like Assassin's Creed. The most egregious one, I think, is Elder Scrolls Online, where I've finished a bunch, because I count different chapters and different DLC story expansions as different quote-unquote game entries, because of the amount of content that they have within them. And so I've done a bunch of those on both Steam and Xbox, and now that section of a spreadsheet is quite chonky. But yeah, there's also, well, I don't know if there still is also, but when I went and looked, there was a big EA franchise sale on Steam, and a lot of the Need for Speed games that they recently moved over there are on like super deep discount. I was really tempted to get Rivals on PC because it's the Ultimate Edition, it'll have a DLC and stuff, but it didn't have any achievements, and I thought the main thing I really enjoy doing in these games is getting achievements. So I thought, hey, I got it on Game Pass, I'll play it on Game Pass. Speaking of Xbox achievements as well, I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, as you're about to see, Need for Speed Rivals is still riddled with bugs all these years later. I'm actually kind of surprised that the servers are still up. And I'm not exactly rooting for like 100% completion again or anything like that. I just kind of wanted to vibe. And it is a vibe. This game is so old now that it's nearly nostalgic. Anyway, as I was saying about Xbox achievements, the other thing is Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers, which is, hi, that's me. I'm Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers. We got the Starter Edition of Final Fantasy XIV for free, which isn't a huge deal, because that's the version that comes with A Realm Reborn, Heavensward and Stormblood only, and requires game time after your first 3 months. So for anyone thinking about getting into that game for the first time, just take the free trial instead, because it's the same amount of content as the Starter Edition. That being said, it also allowed me to claim the quote-unquote early purchase bonus. And for those of you who don't know, if you're playing Final Fantasy XIV on console and on PC, you can do so on the same account, which means, as someone who only really started playing towards the end of Shadowbringers and the start of Endwalker and never pre-ordered shit, I finally have an XP boost item on my account. And I actually streamed myself logging into the Xbox version for the first time and, having a look around and giving it a try. It's a short stream and the VOD is available on this channel if you're curious about it, but the main thing I'm happy about is the 30% boost to jobs level 80 or under, which is massive. I'm ultimately not going to be playing much on Xbox. I don't really want to buy the same expansions twice for no particular reason, but I can now go on to PC and have that same XP boosting earring. I've said it in the past, I really don't approve of them locking XP boost items behind like time limited purchase rewards, because then you get people like me who hopped on the bandwagon at the wrong time and has been leveling his characters as slowly as possible for the last 2 years. But I am also pretty happy that due to my Xbox Game Pass Ultimate perk and claiming that game, I didn't actually have to spend any money at all on getting that little XP bonus. So, you win some, you lose some. Now, I was talking about Xbox achievements. It's pretty funny because, obviously, I've sunk a lot of time into my account and I've done a lot of things which are super rare achievements. But getting the game to recognize that you have done them and to pop the achievement is interesting. I ran a dungeon, it was part of my stream. I was like, okay, I finally got a rudimentary hotbar setup. Let's run an early dungeon just to kind of say we did it on console. because, by the way, relearning that game on controller is an entire thing. But I began to get to grips with it, and after finishing the dungeon, I got an achievement for, I think it was like completing 100 dungeons or something. And there's also achievements for doing like 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000. And clearly I haven't done that many. But then there's also like MSQ story related achievements, and there's achievements for getting your level up to like 50, 60, 70, 80 and 90 in like, you know, various like, I hesitate to say DPS, like DPS tank and melee and magic DPS and aim to DPS, it's a whole thing. They all share one achievement for those level milestones, but then all the gathering jobs, all the gathering jobs share another achievement, and all of the crafting jobs share another achievement. So I had to kill a creature and then gather an item and then synthesize a crafting object. And then there's other ones that I don't really know how to make trigger besides just doing them again, like completing the Omega Raid series and stuff like that. So I do still have a lot of work to do to kind of like get the game to recognize the things that I've already done. I wish it was a little bit easier, like I could just open these logs and it could see my completions and go, oh, and then give me the achievements, but I guess I have to load into some stuff. Ultimately, I don't know if I'm going to bother getting around to making it recognize all of those achievements before my free 30 days of game time are up, but it is a nice big chunk of free gamer score and some very rare achievements. I think I haven't actually got a crafting job up to level 90 yet, but I think I've got one up to level 80, and I think that was like a 0.15% of players earned this kind of achievement. I was like, hell yeah. Again, the usual disclaimer, I know nobody cares about anyone else's achievements, but I just find them very satisfying to collect. Anyway, I want to talk to you about a couple of shows that I've been watching this week, because I've been in a show-watching phase. Real quick, I know I've kind of abandoned Fear, and I'm going to go back and binge-watch that when the series is done, because 20 minutes a week is not a lot to look forward to, and especially with the pacing of that show, you kind of want to binge the cozy 20-minute episodes all together instead of like looking forward to them every week, I think. Maybe it is actually over, I haven't checked for a while. But I've been getting some good use out of Disney Plus because of Shogun. I will not be giving any spoilers, I'll just let you know I'm 5 episodes in, and I believe at the time of recording there's like 7? And I think they said ultimately there's going to be 10 episodes and then that's going to be it. It's just like a 1-season thing. But the premise of Shogun, it's a live action series. It's about back in the 1600s, I think, when Japan was still a relatively new discovery in the Western world. And is it the Portuguese or the Spanish? Are like keeping it a secret so that they can prosper from trade, because like there's this war between them and the English, and this English ship has been looking for Japan, and they finally limp their way to the coastline, and it's just like this really fascinating look of like what Japan was like back then, you know, what English people were like back then, what the Portuguese people were like back then, you know, the kind of like church politics between Catholic and Protestant Christians, and how you know, they don't speak Japanese because they didn't know this place existed really, kind of thing, and like how do they interface with the locals without being able to speak it, and the only people who can translate for them are their enemies and that kind of thing. And beyond that, it's not just like their point of view, it's also like what's happening in Japan at the time with this prestigious house. And I'm not super down on all of the politics of what's going on, but the general idea I get is that there was this one lord who passed away, and you know, his son was too young to rule, so it's being ruled by 5 regents, and there's lots of political strife and drama there, and they all hate one of them because he's got some kind of heritage, and it's just really bloody good. It's fascinating, and I know people cringe when you say, oh, it's like Game of Thrones but in Japan, but if you like that kind of prestige television, I guess, where so much effort has gone into the writing and just getting it like period accurate, one would assume. I know this isn't actual like full-on historical drama, it doesn't use real historical figures, but people have said that basically it is like the events of something that happened, they just kind of changed the names. So yeah, I'm having a really fun time watching that. And then the other thing I'm watching on Disney Plus right now is X-Men. Not X-Men 97, the new rebooted series of that old cartoon, but the old cartoon itself, because I never saw it as a kid. I was more of a Spider-Man enjoyer than an X-Men enjoyer myself. I've never really been a huge X-Men person until I read House of X Powers of 10, which is just incredible, even for someone who has like almost no knowledge of X-Men. It is a fantastic series of comics, holy shit. And so me and Reese were watching X-Men together, very slowly, very occasionally. We were watching that together using the group watch feature on Disney Plus, which they decided to remove apparently last September. Apparently that's how long it's been since we did that. But yeah, they decided to remove that feature that everyone loved, because of course they fucking did. Can't be encouraging people watching the same thing together in separate locations now. That's account sharing. That's a big no-no, and I'm not doing that. Disney, don't at me. So now we're gonna watch it separately, thanks Disney. And yeah, I've basically been. I think we had pretty much watched up to a point where there was roughly a storyline between episodes, but it was mostly just like introductory episodes of like, this is what Wolverine is like, this is what Rogue is like, this is what Gambit is like, that kind of thing. And it was kind of like not all that, continuous. And to be honest, most cartoons of that era aren't. But what I have found fascinating and really rewarding from watching through the X-Men cartoon for 90s on Disney Plus is that it does actually have a continuous storyline. Like towards the second half of season 1, and so far I'm a little ways into season 2, it's got like a really interesting, like I have some vague notion of these storylines that it's adapting, like Days of Future Past and like that kind of thing, but it's really fun to watch it unfold. And Reese tells me it's a little bit different to how it works in the comics, but that is usually how comic adaptations tend to go. But yeah, I'm having a really fun time, and I'm really intrigued as to like what it's going to be like going from finishing season 5 to starting season 1 of X-Men 97, the continuation, and just seeing like the uptick in animation quality and like what everyone sounds like nowadays and what the storylines they're going to go with are. And I did make the mistake of watching the trailer, which completely spoils the ending of the original series, so there's that. Don't do that if you want to go in completely spoiler free. But I was too curious. I was like, what? And it looks really clean and stuff. And I'm watching the old stuff, and the old stuff is not clean at all. And yeah, that's really fun. And speaking of a series that I'm getting into because I am really interested in how a new person is handling the ending, that's a segue, I got back into reading The Wheel of Time. I've taken a break from it for a little while. I've talked about reading the first Book of Swords, and I'm halfway through the second Book of Swords. But yes, for those of you who don't know, I have been reading through The Wheel of Time for 3 years now, and I've just finished book 10, and I don't know if the Blurble Reasoning video for that is out already. Probably not. I don't know when I'm going to get it out, either today or maybe tomorrow, but I decided to, instead of just limiting Audible to listening to it when I'm walking to work or when I get home from work, and certainly never when I'm at work, I decided, hey, I'm playing RuneScape at the minute. That's a very passive game. I'm doing some very passive grinds. I'm just gonna open Audible in a web browser. And by the way, the game froze here for like 2 minutes. I'm gonna open Audible in like a web browser and just listen through the rest of the one that I'm currently on, the one that I just finished, Twilight of Crossroads. That's Crossroads of Twilight. I'm doing really well, thank you for asking. Because as you may recall from last week's episode, I was getting pretty self-conscious about how long it's taking me to read certain series and read certain books. And I think that's very much because I was looking at how long it was taking me to read through The Wheel of Time, and obviously I've just hit 3 years of reading, and I'm just starting book 11 out of 14 now, and they're like 700-page long books. And that's not terrible, but it's also not great when I look at how much life I've got left and how many stories I want to experience. But the thing is, I was looking at it as an average, and I wasn't really taking into consideration the fact that I was taking these long breaks. And as I got back into reading Crossroads of Twilight, I realized, oh, it's not my reading speed that's the issue, it's the breaks I've been taking. And then you go and look at my my backlog spreadsheet for books, and you see the books I've read in between those breaks I've been taking from Wheel of Time, and I go, okay, we're fine. I mean, we're not completely fine. I am still a little bit paranoid about the limited time I have to, experience all these stories. I'm sure that when I am 97 years old, there will be a book series that I'm into that's not finished yet, and I will be like, no, and then I will perish before I get to finish it. But that's a problem for a future era. Anyway, go figure. I got really into the final third of a Wheel of Time book, and I remembered how much I'm loving that series, and I'm really excited to continue going forwards. And you know what's probably going to happen now? I'm probably going to start Knife of Dreams, and it's going to have a really slow start, and I'm going to get bored and wander off again for another few months. I can see the cycle. I'm not blind to my ways. So yeah, it's been a very narrative-driven week for me. I haven't really played many games outside of RuneScape while I've been experiencing these stories, and that's perfectly fine in my books. I talked a lot about Dragon Quest Monsters for Dark Prince last week. I did hit a snag where I learned that when you, I forget what it's called, but when you fuse two monsters together to make a new one, it starts at level 1, and I had just been complaining about the grinding and work in that game, and it really, like, put a bad taste in my mouth, so I'm probably putting that game on hiatus until I go back to it. I do know that you have a reserve party, and a reserve party also get XP, so it's probably not that big of a deal, but I just didn't feel like juggling and figuring out XP and grinding and that kind of thing, he says, as he's talking about grinding to level 99 construction in RuneScape. Don't judge me. I'm sure it's a good game. I'll probably go back to it and get over it at some point and realize I was being a fool, but for now I'm giving that a break. Also, I do still consider myself quote-unquote playing Dragon Quest Builders 1 and Enshrouded like I was a few weeks ago, and I don't know, I guess I've probably put a break on Dragon Quest 7 for now. I haven't thought about that until this very moment. But yeah, in terms of gameplay, it's definitely been a bit of a break week for me, as I've just chilled in RuneScape. I did check out the old school RuneScape released Varlamore this week, and I did the opening 2 quests for Varlamore, and I might put out like a shorter version of an Adventures in Old School Gielinor just to get that out while it's relevant, because I'm definitely more into RuneScape free camp at the minute. But I do really like Varlamore's kind of aesthetic, its look. It's like this South American mixed with a Roman Empire kind of aesthetic, and it's just really cool. I also have recorded the first half of the follow-up to my Batman video, so it'll be Thoughts on Batman 0 Year Part 2. I do need to get back to that project. I do have like several projects half finished up in the air right now, which I hate. I usually try to edit videos all in one go, or at least back to back on 2 separate days, because of you know, I hate like going to clean up my files and then having to be like, oh wait, I need to not delete these ones because they're part of this specific project. Maybe some better file management would help with that, but who are we to judge myself? But yeah, Thoughts on Batman is going to continue. It did get a little bit more views after I pointed out last week that it got very little, so I'm happy about that. If you went and checked that out after last week's weekly Waypoint, thank you very much. Also, last week's RuneScape video did really well as well, so that was pleasing. Anyways, I go to finish this head-to-head right here and get disconnected from the game. I will wrap this up. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in whatever I make next.